Thanks very much for inviting us to speak. My name is Steve Strong.
And my name is Tammie Flook.
We're here because we've worked together at an organisation called Gloucestershire Voices for the last 2 or 3 years. Things have changed a little bit over recent months, but we'll explain that as we're going through. I used to be the manager of Gloucestershire Voices until I retired about 2 months ago. Do you want to describe what your role is at Gloucestershire Voices now?
I am one of the directors of Gloucester Voices. I also do college as well, but I'll explain that more as the presentation goes on.
Okay, so we're going to talk to you about Gloucestershire Voices, which is sometimes known as a user-led organisation. I don't know if that phrase is familiar. Not everyone's comfortable with the phrase user-led for 2 reasons. One is it suggests a sort of being dependent on somebody else, but also because the work we do is about everyone with a learning disability, not just the people who use services. So that's one of the main points we're going to be making. It's about much more than health and social care. And also, our presentation isn't about research in theory, but we have found ways of either carrying out research that is relevant to our work or using research, not least the research that Nora Fry at the University of Bristol have done, because it's really important to delivering the things that we think of as necessary. I'm just going to give a little bit of context about the reason why our organisation exists. Just to remind everyone in the room, I think both Norway and the UK have signed the UN Declaration, and these are some of the things I just picked out, some of the things that we need to remind ourselves about in thinking about what the lives of people with learning disabilities are like in the UK. So these are all our governments have signed up to this, so this is what should be happening. People should have equality before the law, no discrimination. They should be able to make their own decisions. They should be free from exploitation, violence and abuse. They should have a decent standard of living, and they should be able to participate in society and live in the community. So that's what our laws say should be the reality of life for people with learning disabilities, wherever they are. This is the reality of life for people with learning disabilities in the UK. One of the most powerful bits of research that was carried out recently is called, for short, it's the Confidential Inquiry. What the government thought was happening was that people with learning disabilities were dying younger than the average citizen. So they looked at it in more detail over a period of 3 years, and this is what they discovered. Women with learning disabilities die 20 years younger than the average woman. Men with learning disabilities die 13 years younger than the average man. And about 1/3 of the reasons for those premature deaths were avoidable. It was about the way the NHS didn't respond to the circumstances of people's real lives. And Dr. Pauline Heslop is one of Val's colleagues at the University of Bristol, and this is one of the quotes from the research. So it's very powerful research. And one of the things that strikes me is this: if this was the case for any other group of citizens, people would be on the streets saying, not acceptable. Our media would be full of it. So that's one bit of bad news. The other bit of bad news in the UK is about what we've come to know as hate crime and harassment. These are from fairly recent figures, research by MENCAP about what day-to-day life is like for people. Almost 9 out of 10 people with learning disabilities surveyed had experienced bullying or harassment in the previous 12 months. Of those, 2/3 were regularly victims and 1/3 were bullied every day or once a week. 73% have been bullied or harassed in a public place. 25% have been physically assaulted. Only 3% of these incidents are reported to the police, and only 1% leads to a conviction. So this is the reality of life, despite what the UN Convention said should be the reality of life for people. Some other just broad facts. Only one person with learning disabilities in 5 actually works. It's 1 in 2 generally for disabled people. Val, I think, made the point about, or somebody made the point earlier on about poverty. 1 in 2 disabled children live in poverty. So thinking about their life chances for the future, these are quite dramatic figures. And taken all together, it presents a rather disturbing picture of the quality of life of people with learning disabilities. Enough from me, gloom and doom for now. Let me pass over to Tammie and describe what one group of people in one part of the country wanted to do about this situation.
So, let's start with you.
Is it? Don't need to be.
Is it? Thanks. So, it started in 2010 when the council noticed they didn't have a self-advocacy group.
Is it still? Has it gone off, Tammie?
Yeah.
You can avoid pressing the button anyway.
Right. No.
Hold on. Yeah, that's it now.
So the council noticed there was no self-advocacy group in Gloucester. So a group of us, including me, were the first directors. I'm going to talk about this. So, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. Because there's no self-advocacy group in Gloucester. So it was supported by the council. We were lucky that we got a good council, because some places have not got good council, but luckily we have. So this is how the organisation works. Most of the board have got learning disabilities, we've got some that haven't. So we also have got a good team, but half of the staff are disabled, including me. I'm a paid staff, so yeah. And all of everyone get a chance to make decisions. And we also try and do everything in easy read, so it's easy to understand. And everyone is passionate about improving lives of people with disabilities.
That's you, yeah.
Recently, we have some changes to Lost Voices. We joined PING, which is an organisation where they work with mostly people with wheelchairs. So we want to get bigger and better, and we want to have more of a voice. So, and it always fits in the council as well, because we've got a new policy, which is all disabled policy, which is called Build Better Lives, because all age, all disability. So we're all working together to make lives better.
Are you happy if people want to stop and ask you questions as we're going through, or do you want to save it till later?
What do you think?
I'm happy to be interrupted if you are.
Yeah, I'm interested.
If anyone wants to stop and ask any questions, please feel free.
Quality checking of health and social care services. So that's what my job is. We go around checking supported living homes, residential homes. We also check other places to be helped. We've done some out-of-county ones. We also check day services as well, to see if they want the way that people want it to run, and the support staff are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
How many people work on the quality checking team now?
About 4 now, because we recently lost some, so there's 4 now.
So these are paid proper paid jobs?
So we're basically, I'm a project worker, I do 16 hours, so I do some office work as well, and there's other people. So we're basically experts by experience, so we've experienced being in places. So we also got a drama group, which is issue-based. So we did like sexual abuse and hate crime, which I helped with. We also do one at the moment, which is internet safety as well, which is video.
This is my bit, Tammy. We've got altogether, we've got about 30 staff. I think only 3 of them are full-time, but there are 30 staff working on the various projects that we've had going for several years now, and I would guess that they will carry on beyond this coming year. So it feels like it's a steady organisation that's valued by local commissioners to deliver projects that commissioners are still seeing as a priority despite the financial pressures that they're under. Building Better Lives, the policy that Tammie talked about, has got a fundamental policy called co-production, which means that they will come to people to ask what are the most important issues, what's the problems with them at the moment, any ideas about making things better, and then checking through things like quality checking that things are actually getting better. And to get to all of that decision making, they know that they've got to come and talk to people, find ways of talking to people about all of those different areas of activity. So they know that the experts by experience are the disabled people and their families, and they know that to listen to that voice effectively, they've got to find ways of coming out and talking to people on their terms. You don't come to the big meeting at the county council once a month to tell the politicians. People come out and talk to you in the areas where you're comfortable, and quite a lot of people with learning disabilities are not comfortable in formal meetings and not used to speaking out. So they do it on our terms. They come and say, how do we find out what people think about the transport service or the wheelchair service or whatever? And we will tell them the right way of coming out. So we have local forums once every 2 or 3 months in all the different parts of the county. It's a very rural county. They'll come out and they'll talk. And they'll say, these are the things we want to talk about on this meeting. What are the things you want to talk about? So it's an exchange. And they will take the ideas back to the decision makers as well. We have the group that oversees the relationship is the partnership board, and one of the 2 chairs is a person with learning disabilities from our organisation that we support to carry out that role effectively. We've 2 other things I wanted to pick out. Better links with transport. I wanted to pick that one out because it involved a bit of research. Do you remember Becky's research? Yeah. Becky was one of our colleagues who decided that one of the things that would help her do her work is to go and find out what people with learning disabilities felt about public transport. So she constructed a questionnaire that was sent around very widely. We got 120 replies and lots of really useful information about what the issues were about the way people use public transport, the good things and the bad things. And one of them is already influencing local policy about when the free bus pass starts in the morning, means that people can't use it to get to work. So so that's having a big influence. On the better links with housing, again, we helped shape policy. People asked us, we told them that, for example, the traditional model of residential care that's been used in this country for 20 or 30 years was not a good one, not the preferred model. We preferred supported living, where people were able to live in their own homes with their own staff team, etc., etc. So that now is more or less the county council policy. We don't do residential care anymore because we asked people and they told us what their preferences were. So our policy is now shifting, which is great news. We know, this is both of us, Tammie, we know that for the first 6 years of our life as an organisation, we've relied heavily on great commissioners investing in the organisation, and we know that can't last. So we know that if we want to be a strong organisation over a long term, we need to start thinking about different ways of earning our income so that we can think more broadly and creatively in the future. So some of the examples of the things we're talking about feel very straightforward, things that we know we're great at, that probably no one else will be as good as us, even if they were great too, because we're rooted in the lives of people with learning disabilities. We know we're great at these things as long as we do it efficiently. So Tammie, do you want to describe either or both of those?
want to do some easy read because quite a lot of the like the NHS and stuff are not easy for people to learn speeches, so we want to make sure they're easy with pictures, easy words, to make it understandable. Like doctor's appointments, when you get letters and post, that is not an easy. A lot of the time it's not easy reading. I can't understand what it's saying. So we want to make those things easy read. Also training. Quite a lot of us have done training. For example, I do autism training because I've got autism, so I train sports staff on what it's like to have autism. So we want to train staff and stuff and things and train other people. Do like quality checking, we can train other people to do quality checking.
I mean, for our future, we want to build on the things that we know we're great at. We are experts by experience in. So the conversation from colleagues this morning, the great stories you were telling about peer advocacy activity, one of the things that we're doing here is we're training people to be peer advocates, and then they're offering themselves as peer advocates in different settings, including, for example, one sort of fairly wild idea which has yet to see the light of day. But one of our members has got a collection of mobile phones because every time he goes into the phone shop, they persuade him to buy another phone, to take out another contract, because their sales target means that this happens. So one of the things we are thinking about doing is offering that phone company some training on how their staff treats people with learning disabilities as customers, because in the end, it's not good for that company to have the bad stories that will emerge, and it's definitely not good for the person who is not very assertive about saying, no, thank you, I have enough phones already and enough contracts. So maybe maybe the thing about citizenship and being included in the community involves many different things other than just health and social care. Maybe it involves the phone company and the supermarkets and others. So we're thinking about those sorts of things as well. Two other things that we're thinking of. The Gloucestershire, where we come from, the day centres are closed, and they have set up around the country, around the county, things like job interview.
Yeah, I've been to one of my local ones in Stroud.
What do they do?
So they basically do activities. They try and get people out more in the community, like as a group. Some of my friends go bowling. They do, so they do activities like that and stuff.
And the county council have asked us to run 2 drop-ins for 6 months to show how a user-led organisation would deliver a range of activities on a day-to-day basis. So we're doing that when 2 months in.
Yeah, because I'm also going to be bowling that, so I'm going to be helping train the people that use them how to run them more themselves.
Okay, and the advocacy project, again, what we take to people who want services to work very well is we take the argument of saying, we have a set of skills and knowledge that you can't replicate. We will find a way of putting that skill or knowledge into whatever process you've got to allow you to make sure you're doing the right thing. And so the peer advocacy thing that colleagues from Southampton mentioned this morning, but I don't know if anyone here has been following the assessment and treatment unit debate about people getting tucked away in services, and it's really hard for them to speak out. So we Yeah, so why wouldn't we be training people who understand what those people's lives are like as expert peer advocates to go in and help those people get a voice? That's exactly the sort of thing we should be doing.
I know in Southampton, the Learning Disability Partnership Board and our advocacy group linked to the Partnership Board, Busy People has been doing a lot of work since the documentary came out on BBC.
Winterbourne View.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a lot to be done on that issue. Was it Winterbourne View? Yeah. So again, we're finding our natural areas of activity and trying to build on those. So this is chip in, Tammy. I've got a few things to say. This is not about being a charity. This is about delivering things that people are willing to pay for. So one of the challenges for our organisation and other user-led organisations is that we've got to be business-like. We've got to be efficient and deliver services. We've got to produce reports. We've got to produce data. We've got to have systems of handling money, all those sorts of evaluation, service evaluation that are really delivering what the customers want. And that's a bit of a shift from the way we used to be. So we're having to learn about running a business effectively. And that's what I think is persuading our commissioners that we're serious, because we are doing it well and we're producing things on time. And our budgets are competitive. We don't throw money into a budget and say, give us more money because we're poor disabled people. You know, we're going to say, give us money because we're going to deliver the services you want us to deliver. Do you want to say anything about those, Tammie? The last, this point I wanted to pick up on, I know we're running short of time, is that actually what is most important of all is that if your principles are that you are inclusive as an organisation, then you do it. You don't pretend by having someone, a disabled person on the board or a disabled person on the payroll, that you are therefore inclusive. This is hard work, doing it inclusively on a day-to-day basis. You know this, don't you? Yeah, so the points we were saying at the beginning about involvement in decision-making, easy read, day-to-day, as a supervisor of someone with a learning disability, I use different skills sometimes than I do with others sometimes. You just have to fit into the person. But what's it like working in an inclusive organisation from your point of view?
I really enjoy working it. It gives a person with learning disabilities a job, because I got a job out of it.
Yeah, but is it? Have you worked in a different organisation? Can you compare?
This is better because the organisation didn't work with learning disabilities and didn't get very far, so I got more power than this.
So the point you made, you got people who are passionate about human rights and citizenship who are working as your allies in the organisation. Okay, so we've got some madcap schemes because we want to be free of relying on health and social care funding. So we've started to think about, so what else can we do to generate income that will make us stronger and more sustainable in the future, particularly when you bear in mind that most people with learning disabilities never see a social worker and rarely see a GP, a health practitioner. The overwhelming majority of people with learning disabilities live in the community and they don't have contact with services. So the things they are interested in are a whole range of other things that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about today, but here's some ideas that Tammie and I have come up with as wacky generating income.
Holidays. For some like me, I go by myself, but some people, holidays can be a tricky subject. Right? And also bed and breakfast. Why can't people learn business want a bed and breakfast? I've worked at Foxes and I haven't had a chance to use my skills, so in order to taxis cannot be good with people with learning disabilities. I experienced that. So why don't people learn disabilities when they're in taxi firm?
We live in a rural county, or Gloucester's a rural county, and because the way the bus service is so thin, if you want to go out in the evening from where Tammie lives to the main centre, to the pictures of your girlfriend or boyfriend, you have to go home if you're going on the bus at 6:30.
Yeah.
So some social life that is. And if you pay a taxi, it's £25 or something, which is a quarter of your, half of your income. Yeah, no, it's not realistic. So why don't we run the taxi company and provide a proper service and possibly generate some income as well? And any other ideas? What else should we be doing to generate income for an organisation that's interested in quality of life? Okay. Well, we'll pick all your brains this afternoon. Thank you very much. We will do that. So we're going to move on to summarise. So what we think we've shown is that it's possible. You can have a user-led organisation based on strong principles that can do work and deliver effective work and be a much more powerful voice. We've got evidence that we can help shift policy and help improve people's quality of lives in Gloucestershire, I think. Do you know the point you made about the commissioners? We've been very lucky. Our commissioners have been brilliant and very positive. And there were times when the whole thing could have looked very different, but for their strength of purpose, they know that if they didn't have an organisation like ours helping them, what they would be delivering would be worse. It would be less effective. So they know that it's worthwhile investing in organisations like ours. We know that we need to think more creatively for the future about whole lives, but it's good fun, isn't it? Mostly at work, would you say? Don't let me describe it.
Yeah, we work as a team.
We do, and we love finding different ways of sticking to our principles, but finding different ways of improving people's lives. So the last slide is that's our there is a website with our Gloucester Voices, though it's changed. But this one I'd strongly recommend to you. If the YouTube films on sexual abuse and on challenging behaviour are brilliant. They're it's 8 minutes, 10, 12 minutes. The one on sexual abuse, which is finished about 3 months ago.
I did the voiceover.
Yeah, Tammie, you'll recognise Tammie's voice from the film. And it's being used for social work training, for police training already, and I believe there's interest nationally in it. So it's an example of where we can take an important issue, produce something that will generate income and interest from here on in. So please have a look at it if you can. That's us. Thank you very much.